Got a lot of people here. All right. Hopefully everybody can hear okay. We got Anna, Charlie, Heather, Jeremy, Marcellus, Brandy, a bunch of other folks. Awesome. Thanks for checking in. I'm sure we'll get a couple more.
The Geico. Am I saying that right?
We also have Dirt Farmer Industries. Awesome. All right. Well, let me get the ball rolling here because we're already just past 1. Welcome to Wake Tech Entrepreneurship at the Small Business Center webinar today. As you're probably well aware, the North Carolina Small Business Center Network is all the community colleges throughout the state. And if you've heard this before, I will apologize, but we want to make sure everybody knows who and what we are. We do these no-cost webinars and seminars as well as one-on-one counseling, as I mentioned, at all of the 58 community colleges throughout the state. So if you are not here in Wake County, that's A-OK.
Hey,
We've got...
Todd, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
we can't see your screen.
Oh, sorry. Thought I'd shared. There we go. There we go. Sorry. There it is, right? Everybody seeing?
Yep. Uh-huh.
All right. So Wake Tech's unique in that we have entrepreneurship alongside it, which is primarily through our Launch Wake County program. We do 10-week cohort-based classes. We're finishing up a set of them on different municipalities throughout the county right now, and then we have a bunch coming up in the spring. And normally I would normally have the slide up, but I apologize, we don't have which ones. We also run retail pop-up shops, which are incubators down on Wilmington Street with the Downtown Raleigh Alliance, and we will probably in the spring, we're working on it, to have a Wake Tech Contractors Academy as well, which is also, I believe, 8 weeks. There's all our folks, and Rena, who is our North Carolina Military Business Center rep. I'll talk about her more in just a second. There's me, Dave Geikler, who oversees our launch programs, and Lori, who's also on the call. All here for you. North Carolina Military Business Center, I try to make sure I'm working them into our presentations now because most people don't realize that if you want to do federal contracting, and military might be the only federal contracting that's left anymore, you could take advantage of all the services they provide at their website here, ncmbc.us. And they've done a really cool thing. They just started here in October providing every Thursday a session to go over different topics related to, or different releases related to very specific industries. So if you find yourself in any of these, you may want to go to their website and sign up for the webinars they're doing, because their experts are going to be going over those very particular releases, and you could probably take advantage of what they're actually going to be doing. They'll be working specifically with you. Rena is also doing a series for us on government contracting. You can currently go catch the certifications. We did that last month, actually this month, and it's going to be up until the end of this month. And then in November, she's doing past performance and your corporate experience. Here's everything we've got coming up in November. This is just us. Remember that we've got our counterparts all throughout the state are offering similar topics, similar webinars and seminars all day and time, different topics. A couple I wanted to highlight for you coming up in November. We've got North Carolina Library Resources. We've actually got folks from our library with community colleges, as well as the NC Public Library and university libraries, have a partnership called the Business Librarians of North Carolina, and they're going to do a presentation on how all the different libraries have resources throughout the state, and some of the different ones that are available. We're also going to be celebrating Small Business Saturday coming up in November, and all of the other various retail related holidays that come with it. You can join us on November 14th for a webinar to prepare yourself for that and other things. And then our presenter today will be back next month. And while this is a really good one for when you're going into a consultation with an attorney, he will be going over choosing the right legal structure, a very important one that we always get questions about next month on Thursday, December 11th. So if you need that. You can also always hit us up on the socials. We cannot be on TikTok, but we're on everything else, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And if you look up waketech.sbc, you'll find us, and you'll be able to get a bunch of different great things that are going on, not just ours. We try to share everything that's going on in the community, as well as different grant opportunities and other things that are available. So our presenter today, this guy who I always like to bust his chops because he's a super lawyer. I don't know what makes a lawyer super, but he's one, and he's been one for a long time. So I will stop sharing. Ryan, are you available?
Yes, I am available if I can convince teams how to work or convince teams to work.
It's not like you haven't used it before, so you don't get to blame the software. There we go.
Yeah.
You're almost there. Hey, there you go. Awesome.
Did I do it?
You did it.
Yes.
All right, hot dog. So just a brief note about Teams. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but Teams is so bad that the team that works on Teams for Microsoft is no longer allowed to work remotely. They all have to work in office because they cannot get Teams to Teams appropriately. But anyway, my name is Ryan Breen. I'm a lawyer in Wilson, primarily based out of Wilson, North Carolina. For the last 15 years, I was a general litigation attorney. And then I recently transitioned to becoming the CFO and chief legal officer for Brewmasters Food Group in Wilson, Wayne, and Nash counties, looking to expand and continue to expand across the state. But what we are going to talk about today is making the most out of your first consultation with a small business attorney. The underlying thing I want you to remember is that their time is your money. So why in the world does my opinion matter? Like I said, for the last 15 years, I was a general litigation attorney. That's a very fancy way of saying I got paid money to say words for people. From 2020 to 2025, I narrowed my focus to two practice areas: criminal defense and small business formation and support. During that time, I provided support to over 70 small businesses. And also, I teach business law and ethics at Barton College. Like I said, I'm now the CFO, CLO at Brewmasters Food Group, and that is because a client got so tired of paying me hourly, he just decided to hire me outright. One of the things you need to remember is that a lawyer's time and advice are his stock and trade. That is an Abraham Lincoln quote. That's one of my favorite quotes. Lawyers, they produce work product and do all that other stuff, but what you are really paying for when you sit down with an attorney is his time. You need to remember that time is a non-fungible asset. It is an asset that you cannot make more of. You cannot build it back. You can always make more money, but you can always make more goods, depending on what kind of business you are. But what you can never, ever do is make more time. So you have got to make it count. The first thing we're going to talk about is preparation. I cannot tell you how many times somebody sat down with me for an initial consultation and they just say, I'd like to talk to you about my small business. And I say, all right, well, what would you like to talk about? And we just sort of stare at each other. Not only is that awkward, but they are burning through their own money because I'm not, super interested in sitting around and just looking at strangers who tell me they have, quote, small business needs, but don't know what their actual needs are. So going into your meeting, you need to be prepared. One of the things you have to at least have a general idea about, and I know that some of this might sound rudimentary, but we've got to talk to all learners. But one of the things you have to start thinking about is your business plan. A business plan is a document that defines in detail your company's objectives and how you think you're going to plan on achieving them. You need to know what your mission is. You need to know what your product or service is going to be. You need to know where you plan on being located. I think it's important to know whether or not, even though you are consulting with an attorney, more likely than not in North Carolina, whether or not you plan on trying to be incorporated in another state or in North Carolina, and how you expect to monetize. That is, how you expect to make money. You need to know at the very basis these things so that a lawyer can start to formulate a plan to help you. You also need to have an idea of what your corporate structure will be. And if you want an in-depth look at this, please join me in December, where we'll be talking about choosing the right legal structure for you. But the following is just kind of a primer on several different types of legal structure. You need to know if you want to be a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or do you want to be organized as an LLC? Do you want to incorporate as a corporation? And before we go forward, somebody inevitably will have a question about wanting to be an S Corp. S Corps are great. Everybody who operates a small business should probably endeavor to file the requisite S Corp paperwork. However, what you need to know is that an S Corp designation is an IRS designation. That is not a legal structure. The S Corp designation designates how you are taxed on the income from your business. So let's talk about sole proprietorships. Those of you who grew up in the 80s or 90s might recognize the man on the right-hand side as being the one-man gang. Sole proprietorships are automatic. You have complete control of your business. You have the ability to operate as an assumed or trade name. But because you have complete control, you are personally liable for any of the bad stuff, which includes taxes and injuries and damages. It's a good idea or the best idea if you are a low risk business or you're just testing out a concept. The next group is, or the next kind of legal structure is a partnership. You can sort of think of it as Mario and Luigi. It's the simplest structure for two or more people. The North Carolina General Statutes define partnerships as an association between two or more persons that act as co-owners of a business for profit. Just like with sole proprietorships, it's a good choice if you have multiple owners with a low risk business, professional groups, or groups that really just want to test out an idea. Partnerships can consist of more than two people, but it at least requires more than one person. In a partnership, the partners are taxed individually. A partnership will terminate when a partner dies or withdraws from the partnership. A partnership agreement is sort of the governing document of a partnership. A partnership agreement you can sort of think of as like the constitution for your little group. That is what governs. Essentially, it's the terms and conditions of your partnership. If you don't have a partnership agreement, you're governed by general statute, and that's Chapter 59. General partnerships are not required to be filed with the Secretary of State. There are four main types of partnerships. General partnerships, like I said, that don't have to be filed with the Secretary of State. But then you have limited partnerships, limited liability partnerships, and limited liability limited partnerships, which is just kind of fun to say. But the last three, limited partnerships, all those have to be filed with the Secretary of State. The next thing, a lot of folks like to incorporate it as an LLC or organize as an LLC. That's sort of one step up from a partnership. It's sort of the happy medium in between a corporation and a partnership. There are primarily two types of LLC. The first is member managed, and the second is manager managed. A manager managed LLC means that ownership interest in an LLC is made up of membership interest. If you are a sole member limited liability company, you will have 100% of your membership interest. If you have multiple partners, it may be divided equally. Your ownership interest may be divided based on capital contribution or sweat equity that's put into the business. But going back to the two types of member managed or manager managed, what that means is that in a manager managed LLC, the members have selected a manager, which means somebody who's going to be essentially the boss and making the decisions of the LLC. In a member managed LLC, it's a lot more democratic, where everybody's vote is usually tied to their percentage of membership interest. But a limited liability company protects your personal assets in most cases. But particularly in the case of bankruptcy or in the event that you get sued, a limited liability company is the first entity that is legally distinct from its interest owners. Similar to a partnership, limited liability companies are governed by operating agreements or the North Carolina Limited Liability Act. Operating agreements sort of allow you to sort of stylize how your LLC is going to operate. But your operating agreement cannot run afoul of the Limited Liability Company Act. So it must conform to and not strip away rights provided in the Limited Liability Company Act. An LLC, just like a limited partnership, limited liability partnership, or limited liability limited partnership, again, just fun words to say, have to be filed, must file articles of organization with the Secretary of State. And articles of organization are essentially like a birth certificate for your LLC that have to be filed with the Secretary of State. And an LLC will last forever or until the LLC is dissolved. Corporations are brand new people. It's a brand new entity. It's sort of like you're giving birth to your thought or idea or your company. Corporations are also treated like their own people. Corporations make a profit, they're taxed, and are legally liable on their own. In a corporate structure, tax can be paid on income and on dividends to shareholders on personal tax returns. Ownership is established by shares of stock, and that's what sort of differentiates a corporation from an LLC. In an LLC, it's membership interest. In a corporation, it is shares of the corporation. There are several different kinds of stock. The most common are common stock, preferred stock, income-based stock, value stock, and growth stock. Corporations have the ability to increase their working capital by selling stock. And the corporation lives separate and apart from its shareholders, which essentially means that unless otherwise restricted, the shareholder can sell its shares and the business keeps moving right on. Corporations are a good choice for higher risk businesses that need to raise capital, or businesses that include the sale of the business as part of their plan. So, in the words of Dr. Seuss, and I'm pretty sure I lifted it just straight from him, you need to know what you want to do. You need to know where you want to go. And this part did not come from Seuss, but he might have said it once or twice in his life. A lawyer is really just there to help guide you. So knowing what you want to do and where you want to go is kind of on you, and then it's up to the lawyer to essentially assist you, be your guide, be the Gandalf to your Lord of the Rings party. The other thing you need to do is come ready with whatever questions you might have. Lawyers have absolutely no idea what you know and what you don't know. And one of the problems with lawyers, and I say this from experience, is that oftentimes we forget that people don't know the things we know. The usual presumption, though, is that if you've made it this far, if you've made it to the point of hiring an attorney or talking to an attorney or scheduling an appointment with an attorney, you've at least done a little bit of research about your business or your industry. I'll just let you guys take in this beautiful Charles Schulz Peanuts cartoon.
Hey, Ryan, there is a question in the chat.
Okay.
Let's see. I have to go back up. Let me look at my other side of Teams.
Can several small companies operate under an LLC? Yes, an LLC does not have to necessarily be owned by individuals. Ownership interest in an LLC can be vested in another company. However, what you need to know, and this is fun, is that in addition to becoming incorporated or organizing or whatever you may choose, the federal government has decided that now you have to file additional paperwork in addition to your state paperwork, that tells the federal government who the benefit, you have to provide the beneficial owner interest. It's shortened to BOI. But essentially, you have to tell the government who is benefiting from the existence of the LLC. So it's fine, but every corporate entity that has ownership interest in an LLC is going to have to file a beneficial ownership interest statement with the federal government. And if you don't do that, I think it's within 2 or 3 months, they will charge you per day until that is done. So the short answer to your question is yes. The long answer to your question is yes, but make sure everybody is going to do the BOI paperwork. And let me see if I could figure out slideshow. All right, am I back live or back to a big screen?
Yes.
Okay, so when I talk about questions, I mean good questions. Not, I'm thinking of starting a business. As you can tell by the lack of question mark, that's a statement. That makes it the least good question that you could ever think of because it's not even a real question. Thinking of starting a business is not the kind of question you need to come armed with where you say that and you just stare at the attorney and expect them to fly into action. You need to have questions that are aimed at accomplishing your immediate goals. You need to have questions that are aimed at accomplishing your long-term goals. You need to already have roadmapped in your mind where you are and where you want to be. And the questions that you ask really just need to be based on how you are going to get there. You also need to come ready with some answers. Lawyers will ask you questions. Why? Because 80% of the time, our answer to any question ever asked is going to be prefaced with, it depends. Because there are several different factors that come into play in regards to whatever question you may have. There's no, the legal field is very rarely black and white. In fact, we exist mostly in different kinds and hues of gray. Who needs to come with you when you have a meeting or when you have a meeting with an attorney? You need to bring your business partner if you have a business partner. That person hopefully will also have their own questions. Unless it's a single member LLC or a sole proprietorship, very rarely will you have unilateral authority to bind your company anyway. So everybody who has to be present when decisions are made needs to be in that meeting with you. The biggest reason for that is that you need to make sure that every single person that is going to be involved in this venture is on the same page. The next thing we need to talk about, just as important as coming prepared, is trying to figure out, how do you even pick a lawyer? I would say you go to the yellow pages, but I don't think anybody uses the yellow pages anymore. So now you just fire up the Google machine and maybe you type in small business lawyer. But the first thing you need to figure out, and that is important in establishing a relationship with an attorney, is that you just need to have a good relationship with that person. They don't have to be your friend. A friend that you pay hourly for their time is really just, well, kind of this kind of situation. You need to know that when you go and talk to lawyers, not every lawyer does the same thing. There are several different types of lawyers. You don't need to make an appointment just because you see free consultation advertised. You want a counterbalance of knowledge, affordability, and availability. There are attorneys who advertise just to try to get as much traffic to come through the door as possible. That does not mean that they are good or particularly talented at what they do. That does not mean that they have a bunch of experience in what they do. Also, you guys need to know that that does not mean that they are not ethically precluded from taking your case or taking on your situation. A divorce attorney, absolutely, or somebody who focuses primarily on divorce cases, absolutely can try to help you set up your business. Does that mean that that attorney is the best fit for you? Probably not. They're not ethically precluded to doing so because As long as they have a law license, they can practice law, and organizing and providing advice on small businesses is under the guise of the practice of law. But picking your lawyer also kind of depends on what kind of questions you have for that attorney. So if you just have questions about minimizing liability, formation, or governance a corporate structure, just find a corporate attorney, somebody who advertises or says that one of their practice areas is business law. If you have questions primarily about tax and tax implications, find a tax lawyer. Tax lawyers are their own kind of little special thing. They are, all the ones I have met are definitely nice folks, but they sit in their offices and they do tax stuff all day and have just a different knowledge base than what lawyers who focus on small business formation or businesses or corporate governance do. Google, like I mentioned, because Yellow Pages are dead, Google absolutely can be your friend. You have the ability to read online reviews. You can easily navigate to a lawyer's website. And essentially, you can sort of kick the tires and see if the attorney that you're looking at might be right for you without talking to them. You can generally get a pretty good sense of who an attorney is or what they're all about based on their Google reviews, based on their website. For example, if any of you decide to Google me and look at my Google reviews, you will see that I don't suffer fools. I don't put up with a lot of nonsense. And the people that give me the most negative reviews are the ones who I either did not take their case or they were upset with and would not accept the things I was telling them. But if you look at Google reviews, you can sort of get a sense of what kind of attorney they are and what kind of rapport they have with their clients.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey.
What do you think about using AI to Google an attorney? Do you think you'll get reputable responses or credible reviews as opposed to using Google?
Here's sort of my general advice about AI in general. It's in its infancy. It doesn't know. It's learning as much about people as it may be able to respond. The law, your business, whatever business you may be doing, is still very much a people-centered business. One would hope you would not pick a doctor, a psychologist, a psychotherapist, anybody like that by using AI. It's one of those things where you need to see how humans are with other humans. I mean, even dating applications still require some human element. I would be very hesitant to put the hands of my business into the brain of a machine, if that makes sense. And I'll just give a very broad example. Very recently, the food group that I work for opened a steakhouse in Rocky Mount. The concept essentially was we're going to have steaks, we're going to have fillets, we're going to have potatoes, salad bar, that's it. And the owner decided that rather than trying to be creative by utilizing, a human touch, decided he was just going to ask ChatGPT to generate some names for him. And they were all ridiculous. It was like beef and spud, steak and salad, fork and knife. Like, it was just no place that sounded particularly appetizing, but based on the parameters that were put into the search, you just got these weird names. We ended up going with the Rustler, which was promulgated by an individual rather than AI, because, with a rustler sort of sounds like cattle rustling. It has kind of a steak feel to it, a steakhouse feel to it, without sounding too pretentious. And that has done well, but I will maintain that part of the reason it did well is because it's got a human touch to it, and it sounds a lot better than, fillet and fork or whatever nonsense AI was generating. So while AI is currently in its infancy, I would I would rely primarily on reviews that you see and your gut. Your gut's going to take you a long way, and your instincts are going to take you a long way in the operation of your business. But alternatively, in addition to using Google or any kind of search engine, you can use the NCAJ website. NCAJ stands for the North Carolina Advocates for Justice. There's a link. The materials are going to be provided to you. It's a membership website. The people who listed aren't necessarily vetted by the organization. However, they're doing well enough to pay a substantial yearly fee to tell people what their practice areas are and network and try to become better attorneys based on the continuing legal educations that are provided just to their membership. So they are not necessarily elite just by virtue of membership, but they do tend to be an upper tier of attorney. But, and most importantly, you can't stop at Google or the NCAJ directory. You need to look up that attorney in the state bar portal. And the reason for that is that it will tell you how long the attorney has been practicing and whether or not disciplinary action has been taken against them. That is something, and that is a return that AI generally will not give you. You have to go to that website and find out whether or not that attorney's been disciplined. Why is that important? Because disciplinary action is bad. It's as bad as it sounds. You need to make sure that the attorney that you are entrusting your future in, your family's future in, does not have a history of commingling funds, does not have a history of taking money, does not have a history of, flying off the handle and indulging in too many adult beverages. You need to make sure that whatever attorney you pick is on the up and up, on the level, and has not previously been disciplined. One of the other things you need to remember is that not all lawyers are created equal. There are no scores for the bar exam. The bar exam is essentially pass-fail. It is a minimum competency test. Someone, somewhere, today, will have an appointment with the worst lawyer in the world, and you want to make sure that person isn't you. So at the very beginning of this, before I started talking, Todd said, he's a super lawyer. I'm not 100% sure what a super lawyer is, but what I will tell you is that the super lawyers list, especially the super lawyers rising star list, that means that I'm in the top 2.5% of criminal defense attorneys in the state of North Carolina, as voted on by my peers and by my results as researched by the good people at Thomson Reuters. So the super lawyers list, if you can get a hold of it, is also a good way to find potentially good candidates in your area. But yeah, not all lawyers are the same. Not all lawyers are created equal. Just because somebody has a shingle, an office, cool commercial, that does not mean that they are a good lawyer. The next thing I want you to consider is how to communicate with my people. Lawyers have human-like qualities. We want to be loved. We want to be taken care of. We need to be nurtured, just like everybody else does. However, we are all geeks and nerds. And there are two types of folks, and that's fine. Geeks tend to be more affiliated and appreciate gadgets and research and things like that. Nerds tend to be a lot more introverted. Those are kind of like your tax attorney folks. Fascinated with academics, not the most social. But we're all one or the other. We're all either geeks or nerds. We're all split into Star Wars or Star Trek, and I'll let you pick which one's which if you are so inclined. But in considering lawyers, you need to understand and be cognizant of the fact that we speak a different language from the general public. Yes, we speak English, but it is a different kind of English. We literally have our own dictionary called the Black's Law Dictionary. When we ask you questions, be prepared that some of the questions will sound dumb to you. Some of the questions, based on which attorney you go and speak with, will in fact be dumb. But the questions are usually just for clarification purposes. Also, what we're trying to do is translate what you said into a language we understand. Um, like I said in my introductory slide, I teach at Barton College, and I was speaking with one of my students today, and she was remarking on the fact that some of the words I use are different than what she is typically or the definition that she typically associates with that word. And that's sort of what I'm talking about. Lawyers usually are very precise in their word choice because our words have legal effect. Um, we don't just get to say whatever pops into our heads. The words we use and the words we choose are very specific. And that's to point our way to a specific goal. So it may get confusing sometimes. Our job and the job of a good attorney is try to explain our legal words into what everybody else can and should understand. And then after we do that, we have to figure out how to translate our words and language into words you'll understand. So when you talk to us, like I said, if you look at my Google reviews, some of them are from folks who did not like the result, and that's because they received answers they did not like. That doesn't mean that the lawyer doesn't like you or they don't like your business. It just means that it could be better. Remember that lawyers make their money primarily on afterwork. So while they may provide a free consultation, where lawyers really make their bread and butter is by getting work after the initial scope of work is completed. So, for example, if you need help organizing or incorporating, that's great. Most lawyers can help you. But then be prepared that they're going to ask you about drafting articles of organization or corporate bylaws. Do you have money, or do you have issues getting money from your clients? No problem. How about we take a look at the forms and the receipts and the process through which you invoice your clients and see if we can make those forms airtight, see if we can streamline that process so you get paid faster. Of course, both of those things come with an hourly cost, but they're trying to be helpful. They're trying to make some money. They're trying to get your business in a better position to be successful. Now, there are a lot of warning signs that you need to be aware of when you are dealing with an attorney. Any attorney that guarantees a result. Attorneys cannot guarantee results, particularly in any kind of case. They are ethically precluded from doing so, which means that it is a breach of our ethical duty and our professional responsibility if we guarantee a result. The only sort of equivocation on that is if we do scrivener work or do some writing work. So you can guarantee that a corporation will become organized, but I can't guarantee you that if you organize, you will be immune personally from all suits ever until the end of time. If an attorney guarantees a result of any kind, that is a red flag. If you go into a consultation and the attorney does not ask for any kind of documentation regarding what you want to see. So, for example, let's say you have a contract issue you are going to talk to the attorney about, and the attorney says, "Oh, well, I don't need to see the contract. Just tell me generally about the contract." That's a warning sign. Because no attorney can comment on a contract without actually seeing the contract. Why? Because legal words are words of precision. We have to see what the contract actually says. And sometimes what the contract actually says is not what you think it says at all. So if you have a question or going in for a consultation that requires some sort of documentation, bring that with you. And if the attorney says the documentation does not matter and cannot provide you a good reason for why it might not matter, that's another warning sign to be on the lookout for. The next warning sign is an attorney that does not take any notes, one that just sort of listens to you and gives you the While that is great, while they may be digesting the information, the fact that they are not taking down any notes to which they can refer to later is a warning sign. Taking notes is a sign that they are listening to your issue. One of the biggest knocks I used to get from people is they look at me and I'd be typing on my computer or writing on a piece of paper and not looking at them in the eye. They'd say, well, why aren't you looking at me? And my answer is because I'm literally writing down everything you say that is important. If I'm stopping writing and I'm just looking at you, and this is particular to me, this isn't particular to every attorney, but if I stop writing and I'm just looking at you, that's because you're saying things that are legally not significant to me. And so then I can I can look you in the eye. But in the meantime, the way you can tell, at least again, for me personally, is that I'm paying attention is because I'm taking notes on what's being said. But if an attorney is not taking any notes or does not have anybody in there taking notes for them or does not indicate to you that you are being recorded so that notes can be generated later, that is a warning sign for that attorney that you probably should not be using that attorney. The next thing is any attorney that reschedules with you multiple times on short notice. It's true that they are busy. It is true that you are busy. You need and deserve an attorney who is willing to give you the respect to give you their time. If you're willing to give them time, they need to be willing to give you time. And an attorney that reschedules multiple times on super short notice is usually very disorganized and is not going to end up being respectful of your time. As a converse, I had somebody reach out to me wanting to be some sort of liaison between me and another group. And I can say this because no attorney-client relationship was ever established and because I was not dealing with whoever the prospective client would be. But this person fancied themselves to be a liaison of some kind. I gave them my information, told them to have the person directly contact me. Month goes by. They say, hey, the liaison gets back in touch with me, says, hey, they're not, they just don't have time to contact you. Can we get something set up through me to do that? And I said, no, if I'm willing to stop what I'm doing and take the time to schedule an appointment with these folks, they need to be able to take the time, schedule an appointment and sit down and talk with me. And the way that it was sort of regurgitated to me is that they were going to ask me questions on the person's behalf. And I told them we're not doing that. And that's because having a liaison who's not affiliated with your corporation or business or whatever ask questions on your behalf is sort of like sending somebody else to the doctor when you're sick. The only person that can give the appropriate information to the doctor, to the lawyer, or the people that are in it. It's never going to be somebody that is designated to do that is outside of your organization or your corporate structure. The next warning sign is any attorney who suggests an uncomfortable amount of after work. So think of it sort of, I guess the best analogy is thinking of it in terms of, buying a car, the old like slick car dealer thing, where you buy the vehicle and then they ask if you want the upgraded tires with the super tread and the shiny Johnson rod and premium washer fluid and the left-handing steering column and all these other things. Those are all, I say those things in jest, but they are extra things that nobody really needs. So if an attorney is asking you or telling you that they need to do extra stuff outside of the scope of what you initially came in there to do, then you need to keep an eye out for that, because that attorney may be gouging you or trying to create work for themselves that is unnecessary for what you need. So if you come in just to incorporate, and they, it's okay if they suggest corporate bylaws or corporate bylaws or other organizational documents. However, it gets kind of weird if they start saying, well, we need to start doing, I want to go ahead and start drafting contracts. So that way, so if you sell ownership interest, you'll already have those. Well, that's kind of weird. That's not a need that you anticipate right out of the gate. You want to make sure whatever they're suggesting is within the scope of what you actually need and want. So remember, our time is your money. Please come prepared. Choose your attorney wisely and keep an eye out for those warning signs. At this time, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer whatever questions you may have.
All right, Ryan, I'm going to go back just a little bit because I want to make sure all of the questions that were asked early on were either answered or may still need an answer. Let's see. So there looks like there's a question. What if the conversation has to do with removing a partner? I'm not sure
So
if there was
that's
something.
different.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I see the question from David. What if the conversation has to do with removing a partner? So that's a little bit different. That's on the dissolution side. That would not be a conversation that you had. That would not be an initial conversation that you had with an attorney. It may be because you've had to find a separate attorney because the attorney that did the original incorporation or organization is the attorney that you guys use. So you may have to go outside for that. But yeah, if you are taking an action adverse to somebody else within the corporation, yes, it does make sense that person not be there so that you can get that advice. And that person is going to have to be represented by somebody else anyway. But the best practice for that is not to go with the partner that is there. But you need to make sure and consult with the attorney, if there was an attorney that drafted the original articles of organization or your corporate bylaws, to make sure that you are going about removing that person correctly according to the bylaws, partnership agreement, or articles of organization, or not articles of organization, but operating agreement for your entity. I think Heather W. and Charlie answered each other's questions. The next one, why use AI search tools and professional organizations already exist? Okay, that was answered.
Answered that one.
Yep. I think a lot of people are afraid of lawyers because they are $500 an hour. That's not true. Lawyers typically are not $500 an hour. Usually, and I mean, you can look up the medium hourly rate for attorneys in the area. You may be looking at $200 to $300 an hour, which I understand isn't, it's still a lot of money. But one of the things you can be on the lookout for, particularly in and around the community, is that a lot of attorneys will do initial consultations for free. And they will advertise and say that on their website. And it's been my experience that that's one of the ways to best advertise your services, is to get in and sit down and talk with somebody for free. Being in private practice and having to be somebody who does a bunch of free consultations is painful, but it is beneficial to prospective clients to do that. But when we talk about people being afraid of lawyers because they are expensive, that's why I encourage you to do a bunch of research up front before you select somebody to sit down with. So don't just do one where you Google, read the reviews, take a look at them online, see if they have any publications, look and see if they do, or look at NCAJ, or look at disciplinary records. You need to do all those things so you can make an informed decision. Again, going back to my own Google reviews, if you go in and read, one lady got super mad at me because she called while I was in court to try to hire me for a case, and she said that she did not realize she was talking to the attorney when I answered the phone. Well, had she gone to breenlawnc.com, saw that there was only one attorney, his name was Ryan Breen, and I answered the phone, "Hello, this is Ryan Breen," she would have been put on notice that I am the attorney. I don't know why she would have been surprised about that. But it's one of those situations where she was just cold calling folks to try to get somebody to fix her problem. And what is particularly interesting in our current climate is that lawyers are starting to get to the point now where they're actively trying to undercut one another. And that's part of the reason I got out of the general practice game, is because I was refusing to undervalue myself. But anyway, could you speak to the benefits of having a holding company? Is this recommended over having multiple LLCs? My response to that is talk to a tax attorney. So no, I cannot speak to the benefits of having a holding company because that is outside of the scope of what I was hired to talk about. What are good reasons for a small business owner to speak with an attorney? Anytime you were getting ready to make a big decision, anytime you were getting ready to incorporate, organize, or make a drastic decision where you may incur liability, that's when you need to go talk to an attorney. Is Rocket Lawyer a reliable, affordable source for some of these matters? Rocket Lawyer is affordable, and that is the best thing I can tell you about Rocket Lawyer. Rocket Lawyer is not necessarily reliable. You may not get somebody who practices in this state. You may not get forms that are germane to this state. So even though it is affordable, that does not make it a good choice. Jeremy says, we have talked a lot about what not to ask and what not to do and mistakes to avoid, but what are some good questions that you should think about leveraging? I don't understand leveraging an attorney for. What do you find the most valuable types of questions to be for a business owner? It's business dependent. I can't tell you what's important to you or what's important to your business. I think you need to create a priorities list that you are comfortable with, that identifies your own priorities and what questions you may have for an attorney. I don't think it would be proper for me to provide examples or tell you what the most valuable types of questions are, because that would just be very, very general information, because there are several thousands of different types of businesses, and all of them require different needs. How do I feel the websites like Zen Business and LegalZoom to start businesses? I don't like them. I don't think they do a good job of explaining what everything is. I think it's just filing. I think they're just filing stuff. I also don't think that. I think it's important to know who your registered agent is, what a registered agent is, what the function of a registered agent is. I think it's important to know the difference between member managed and manager managed. I think it's more important to have somebody sit down, look you in the eye, and explain these things to you than just use Zen Business or LegalZoom. Typically, I know that when I'm helping a business incorporate, and again, I'm different because I'm just a different cat. But I usually do $200 plus filing costs, so I'm at $328 for an LLC. Usually, when I was doing them for the general public. But what comes with that $328 is you get my time, talent, and attention in regards to setting up your stuff. And I'll tell you what you need to do and walk you through filing your BOIR statement so you don't get dinged by the federal government. I also tell you what happens on the back end, what to expect in a year. There are a vast majority of people who do not understand or appreciate that you have to file an annual report every year, or your LLC or corporation will become administratively dissolved. I don't know if LegalZoom or Business provide that type of information, but I think it's important that it's information that's important to have, because if you don't know it, then you really just do not know it. Do you do website legal paperwork, TNCs, etc.? No, I do not anymore. I am kind of out of the game. I'm no longer for hire for the general public. But I think that takes me through all the questions. Does anybody have anything else? We got, oh, this is a weird one for the entire group. If any LLC at the state is a Roman numeral off from the IRS EIN name. 2 versus 3. Does anybody have any experience in changing your business name with the IRS? Yeah, you just have to contact them. That's the short answer. You just need to send them a letter. In regards to Degaku's question, yes, incorporating a nonprofit, I would get a corporate or business attorney, or one that works primarily with nonprofits, because it's different. A nonprofit has several different moving parts to try to make sure that people do not take advantage of 501c designations for their own gain. So there are a lot of little checks. So I would definitely go hire an attorney, because there are several different forms that need to be filed before people who are giving you money get the benefit of your nonprofit status. Do most lawyers do terms and conditions, or there is a specific type of lawyer I'm in need? I would find an attorney who does, I'm guessing TNCs or terms and conditions. I would look for people who hold themselves out to be business attorneys. And then when they talk about their experience or expertise, look in contracts, contract negotiations. I'm not sure what your particular business is, but if it's web-based, see if they have, usually there will be some indication that they do some work for that. What kind of lawyer would you need for changing the state your LLC is registered in? Is that even possible? Honestly, it would probably just be easier to incorporate or organize in that state rather than try to swap. Typically, what states do, instead of starting somewhere else or trying to change your registration, is they do. This is not a question I expected to answer today, but I'm going to attempt to field it. It's not certificates of authority, are what they're called, and that just says that you're authorized to operate in your home state, and that the Secretary of State or comparable agency in that other state has checked you out and everything's good.
Okay, so we are at 12:58. We have time for maybe one last quick question for Ryan. And he is going to make these slides available. Is that correct, Ryan?
Miss Lori, you got them.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I could send them out.
Oh, yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Okay, so yes, I will send out the slides to everyone in attendance today. If you know someone that did not attend, then they will not receive the slides. But all I could say is I am sending the slides out to those that attended in this session today. And again, please do not forget that Ryan will be with us again. You can go on to our site just as you did for this class and register for the next class that Ryan is going to teach for us. I will also send out the slides that Todd went over this at the beginning of the session to indicate what classes that we have coming up as well. I do want to thank everyone for attending this class today. Ryan, as always, a lot of good information, and I know that Ty called him a super attorney, but I think he is very knowledgeable in his field and will give you the good information that you're looking for. So again, thank you all for attending and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.